Okay, here we go, our daily fuel. And here's a very unusual story in the New Testament, in the book of Acts. We're going through the New Testament in a year, and we get to this particular story. Account. It's a little unfair to call them stories. Jesus told a lot of stories. Jesus used the story method of teaching, but story sometimes sounds like a fiction, right? So it's not a story, it's an account. And so we get to this account in the book of Acts, chapter 5. But there's some progression to the book of Acts. So before we go a little bit further, let's just think about this progression that happens in the book of Acts. From the book of Acts takes about 33 years. So chapters 1 through 8, for the most part, take place in Jerusalem. It's the locality, with the Jewish people, and primarily with Peter. There's an awful lot about Peter in here. Now, there's the other apostles as well, but Peter just keeps showing up all the way through. Chapters 1 through 8. Chapter 9, the Apostle Paul gets converted. And in chapter 10, all the way to the end of chapter 28, it changes. So if it's Jerusalem, the Jews, and Peter, what happens after the conversion of Paul, chapters 10 through 28, becomes the nations, no longer just Jerusalem and Israel, but it becomes the nations. It becomes the Gentiles, the non-Jews, and the Apostle Paul. So that's the big break in the book of Acts. And the book of Acts is going somewhere. As we go through it, like each chapter is connected to the previous chapter. So chapter 1, you find them waiting for the Holy Spirit to come for the church to be born. Chapter 2, the church is born. Chapter 3, we see what begins to happen in the city and what begins to happen with the apostles. And we see that resistance starts to break out. There's resistance from the Jewish community, from the Jewish leaders, just like there was resistance to the ministry of Jesus. And we see one day in the life of the church and what happened with the healing of this man. And then chapter 4, we see a little bit more about what happens in the life of the early church, where Peter goes and he goes to a prayer meeting and the Holy Spirit shakes the room and they're filled with the Holy Spirit, and they pray that Jesus would reach out his hand and heal, and that there would be miracles. And then we see that they're sharing everything together, and they're growing as a church body. Well, now that they're growing as a church body, what we're going to see in the next couple of chapters is that anytime a church body is together, there are problems. There's problems. And the problems are the same. There's variations on a theme, because no two problems are exactly alike, but the themes are the same. And so we're going to see that there's problems on the inside of the church, and there's problems on the outside. So the problems on the inside are going to be things like hypocrisy, self-righteousness, division, prejudice, all of these things on the inside. And so on the outside, they're getting pressure from the religious authorities. And on the inside, they're having all of these issues that we have today, the same. When we have church and we get people together, we have the same problems. So we're in chapter 5. And chapter 5 says, "Now there was a man named Ananias together with his wife Sapphira, and they sold a piece of property." So in the previous chapter, people were selling properties and they were laying the money at the feet of the apostles, and the apostles were distributing it as there was need among the needy people in the church, as well as, I'm sure, for the spread of the gospel. With his wife's full knowledge, so they did this together, he kept back part of the money for himself, but he brought the rest and he put it at the apostles' feet. Now, that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to keep some and he wanted to give some. So he didn't have to give anything. He's under no obligation to give anything, but he wanted to give some. and he kept some for himself. But he apparently is trying to show some level of super spirituality where he has taken everything and given it all, which wasn't true. It was a lie to the church. It was a lie to the Holy Spirit, is what we'll see. Then Peter said, Ananias, how is it that Satan so filled your heart that you've lied to the Holy Spirit and have kept for yourself some of the money you received from the land? Didn't it belong to you before it was sold? You could have done with it you want. It's your land. Why would you lie about it? Didn't it belong to you? And what made you think about doing such a thing? You have not lied to human beings, but you've lied to God. So he makes some kind of pretense in front of the church, in front of the whole body, or in front of the leaders, however it is. He makes this sort of pretense that he's this sacrificial, righteous man, and he's playing a game. It's hypocrisy. When Ananias heard this, he fell down and he died. Wow, that's pretty heavy stuff. And great fear seized all who heard about what would happen. And the young men came forward, they wrapped up his body, and they carried him out and they buried him. About 3 hours later, his wife came in. They buried him without his wife even knowing about it, not knowing what happened. And Peter asked her, tell me, is this the price that you and Ananias sold the land for? And she said, yeah, that's the price. And Peter said to her, how could you conspire to test the Spirit of God? Listen, the feet of the men who buried your husband are at the door, and they will carry you out also. At that moment, she fell down at his feet and died. And then the young men came in, finding her dead. They carried her out and buried her beside her husband. And great fear seized the whole church and all who heard about these events. Well, I guess all fear would come upon you. And I guess the fear is a good thing, because you want honesty, you want transparency, you don't want hypocrisy, you don't want self-righteousness, you don't want people parading around as though they're all religious and self-righteous when they're not. And so this was pretty heavy dealings. This was pretty crazy stuff. But God is making a move to try to keep the early church pure, and it's going to be a difficult road because people are involved, and we'll see that it really only kind of gets worse in a way. And then the apostles performed many signs and wonders among the people, and all the believers were together in Solomon's colonnade. They met outside in big meetings, and no one else dared join them, even though they were highly regarded by the people. The people liked them, and the people thought they were, good people. It says in Acts 2 that they had favor with all the people in the marketplace. They were probably fair in their dealings. They were probably kind to their neighbors. And they met in these large groups, so people were like, I ain't joining that thing, man, because everybody heard about what happened to Ananias and Sapphira. Nevertheless, more and more men and women believed in the Lord and were added to the number. Well, which one was it? People weren't gathering to the church, or great numbers of people were coming. It's both, because people were coming to the Lord, but nobody was coming and being sort of a quasi-believer or a fake believer or a casual believer. The only ones that were coming were ones who were like, this is heavy stuff. And it is heavy stuff. And as a result, people brought the sick into the streets and they laid them on beds and mats, so at least Peter's shadow might fall on them as he passed by. Man, this guy's got a massive healing ministry. And crowds gathered also from the towns around Jerusalem, bringing their sick and those tormented by impure spirits, and all of them were healed. And so this sort of progression of what's going on, there's the power of God is present in their midst. And if there's going to be lies and make-believe believers, phony believers, it's going to ruin the thing fast. And so God intervenes. And I guess in a way, thankfully he doesn't intervene that way anymore, because there'd be so many dead people in the church. Or maybe it's not thankfully. Maybe, it would be easier if God just cleansed the church from all of the phonies and all of the hypocrites and all of the people that come to take advantage of women and try to rip off your money and all those kinds of things. But we're going through the progression of the early church, what's happening with them, the growth pains that they're experiencing, and we'll see another growth pain as we get together again tomorrow. So Lord bless you guys, keep you, make his face shine upon you, may give you peace. Hey, Love you. Let's keep moving through the New Testament.